for joining today's webinar. Our host, Yusuf, is going to be kicking it off. And as I wait for Yusuf to organize his mic, which we've tested and tested, I'll just kick it off. So Yusuf, I understand you're having problems with the mic. So is it okay if I just continue? You could type into the chat area and I will continue from there. Yeah, thank you for the thumbs up. So I will be speaking on today's webinar, and the topic for today is dependency management, remote working, or when not remote working. I'm an agile coach, consultant, and trainer. I've worked with organizations, most of the top organizations who deliver training, and I've also delivered training for the following organization. And I'll be sharing some of the experiences that I've encountered when we've been trying to deal with dependencies that have impacted initiatives that I've been working with while supporting and coaching such initiatives. So here is the agenda. We've done an introduction. We'll have a quick review of some of the challenges that we might have all experienced during our times working on solutions. And if you've got any questions during this webinar, feel free to type them in to the chat area. We've all used the chat area to say hello, and hello to everyone again. So to bring us into this particular session, I've got an exercise. And for this particular exercise, it won't be us running around our rooms or trying to exercise our legs, since most of us have been working from home. The exercise will be a reflective exercise for us to go back to some of the initiatives we work on and reflect on the challenges we have during such initiatives. So in this 1 minute reflection, I would like you to spend just a minute reflecting on some of the challenges you have experienced whilst working on your initiatives, either projects or delivering product solutions. So a quick 1 minute reflecting on some of the challenges you've experienced whilst working on your initiatives. So the 1 minute starts now. Yep. So with all the challenges you've reflected on and had some time to draw them back in your memories, we have also spent time working with some of our clients, and we've also identified some of the challenges you've mentioned. As I go along, feel free to type in the challenges, and if there's a need for them, and I've also experienced them, I'll use it as one of the webinar series. I know Imran has talked about time management, schedule management. Gina has talked about stakeholder engagement. Imran has talked about managing resources and hoping they can be utilized effectively. Isaac has also mentioned managing stakeholders and getting them into his workshop. Very interesting. Some of the challenges we've drawn are prioritizing product backlog with stakeholders, overstretch on the product management role. In this particular session, we'll focus on dependency management. And we've also engaging the right stakeholders, changing business and market priorities, lack of available resources, and the list goes on. So we've got so much we are working through as part of our product management series. It looks like we're reflecting on challenges, but why do we look at challenges? Challenges will help us draw experience, and then with those challenges, we can identify ways of working to help improve. It's like the lessons learned, it's like the sprint retrospectives that would help us improve on our future initiatives. And I've got an interesting slide that helps me reflect on such challenges. Whenever I see athletes, I know they've prepared so much. And for most product initiatives, we all do the same. We do all the planning, we do preparations from day one, each day, and we hope that once everything kicks off, we are able to get to the end and satisfy our customers. But that's not what happens often. And in most organizations where we adopt agile models, the focus is we can offer greater customer centricity, we can offer faster time to market, we can increase revenue, and we are able to manage the workforce to help deliver value. But our attempts to deliver value to the organizations does not achieve the benefits we initially stated. Rather, we encounter challenges throughout the process. Yeah. So let's take a look at dependency management. The key question is, what is dependency management? And why am I interested in dependency management? As I go along, I'll share on some of the dependencies that have impacted projects and some of the tools we've used to deal with dependency. So dependency management, as defined in some of the project management book, is the process of managing all of the interrelated tasks, resources within the project to ensure that our project meets its overall goal, objective, on time, on budget. But in agile initiatives, we say if we can meet our minimum viable products as quickly as we can and to meet the customer's expectation, we are delivering the value to the customer. So to meet the minimum viable product in an agile environment, we still have to manage dependencies. In a non-agile, agile, waterfall environment, we still have to manage dependencies. And the dependencies are either internal or external to the teams building the solutions. We will look at some examples of internal dependencies, and we'll also touch on some example of external. Okay, can you all hear me? Type yes if you can all hear me. Okay, thank you. So let's move along. Thank you. So dependency management. How do we effectively deal with dependency management? In my discussions with agile teams and some of the facilitators who will be helping us in the breakout session, we identified these key steps in dealing with dependencies. They would always be there. So either internal or external. First, let's identify the dependencies. When do we identify them? We should identify them throughout the projects or throughout the product delivery process, whether we're working in a waterfall or agile environment. Personally, I do enjoy agile environments, so I might talk about a lot of agile environments. But when it comes to waterfall as well, I'm a PMP certified PMP trainer, also worked with PMP on the board. So I have more answers around dealing with dependencies in a waterfall or agile environment. Secondly, let's create plans for managing the dependencies. In an agile environment, we tend to create plans at the epic level. We will also create horizon plans for features, and then we'll create various roadmaps. And as we create the various roadmaps through workshops, through backlog refinement exercise, we should also consider dependencies as one of the key things we want to discuss throughout the meetings. Thirdly, let's set strategies for dealing with dependencies. And our team of facilitators came up with the word Rome. So we'll look through the word Rome and how Rome can help us in managing dependencies. More importantly, you've identified them, you've created plans for them, you've started putting in place strategies. The fourth stage is you have to proactively manage and monitor the dependencies. We'll also talk about some skills and steps that we could put in place in managing dependencies. And to help us achieve value to our customers, the focus is let's eliminate dependencies in our deliveries. And some of the dependencies could be teams having dependencies on each other, where a team has to complete a piece of work for another team to continue working, where in a software team, the database team or the data team will have to build the database so that the development team can link their front end or back end to the database for the system to start working. It could be also dependencies with external suppliers where we will need their code or their APIs, or it could be dependencies on making sure that our external suppliers perform a role so that we can also go ahead in building our solutions. In dealing with dependencies, dependencies go through these stages. We can find dependencies in stage 1 of the product lifecycle, where we research and develop the product. When we introduce the product to the market, we still have dependencies. When the product is at its start growth stage, we still have dependencies. When the product is matured and we've got feedback from the customers to improve the product, upgrade the product, we still have dependencies. When the product is declining, it still would have dependencies. But in this particular session, we are not looking at the entire product life cycle. The focus is on the research and development, and we are applying some of the safe practices, concepts, and principles to help us in dealing with dependencies. Yeah. So I would like you to understand we're looking at the research and development phase in this particular session. Yeah. So the focus is all around the research and development. In other sessions, we would look at some of the dependencies in the introduction, some of the dependencies in the growth, and some of the dependencies in the maturity phase. So our whole focus is on the research and development phase. How do dependencies look like in a very complex environment? Let's take a look at a very complex environment. This is how it looks like in a very complex environment. It's not the best environment you want to be. And if you were trying to go around this just to find the right way to go, I'm sure some of us will be having a lot of difficulties. So dependencies in a very complex environment can present challenges to the teams involved, and complex solutions would have multiple dependencies to be managed, and they'll span from various parts of the solutions, systems, suppliers, vendors, departments, and various value streams. All the dependencies will play a part and would impact the teams who are Can you all see my screen? If you can all see my screen, say yes.
Yeah.
Isaac, can you see the
We
screen?
can see.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So if you have dependencies, dependencies will have impact on the project in the long and short term. And for whatever reason, you still want to resolve, you still want to own the dependencies, you always want to mitigate the dependencies. Some of the key things that dependencies can lead to in organizations are, it can lead to demotivation in the teams to be able to deliver the solution, because if you have a dependency that's holding you from delivering your outcome, and if it's not resolved, that can demotivate the team from delivering their solutions. How much more painful if they've got a dependency on someone within the leadership team and they are waiting for that dependency to be cleared? That can also impact the teams. It can also lead to a delay in delivering the solution. A dependency can also increase the cost in delivering the solution, and it can impact other activities either in the life or operational environments, and we don't want to keep dependencies hanging around within our businesses. So if you're delivering a solution, always think about dependencies and manage the dependencies throughout the process. The Scaled Agile framework is one that I've been looking at, and I've drawn a lot of interest in how they've managed dependencies. They use a 2-day PI planning event to help all the teams focus on dealing with dependencies. There are also meetings at the portfolio level to look at dependencies. So across all the stages, there's a huge focus on dependencies. But in visualizing dependencies, the Scaled Agile model uses the program board. And we will take a look at the program board, and I'll talk about the program board and when we create the program board. Yeah. And this is the program board the Scaled Agile model uses. Yeah, I'll discuss it, and I'll talk about why you have strings, why you have various swim lanes, and how all of this would help in managing dependencies. What about a remote environment? We are currently in a situation where most teams are in a remote environment. In a remote environment, we could still use tools to help us in dealing with dependencies. So this is the PI planning app that some teams have used in dealing with dependencies, just like we can see previously from this where we've used strings. Here, the tool enables the teams to connect the dependencies. And where there are lots of dependencies, we understand there's so much complexity in dealing with this particular solution. So we take a huge focus in looking at that particular area and resolve the dependencies. So with regards to dependency management, internally, there are dependencies on the product, there are dependencies on the solution, there are dependencies on the internal environment. People also play a part. And the people within the projects could also create dependencies, the technical architecture. Suppliers also play a part, external environment also plays a part, and the political environment really impacts how much more the market that we want to go into. So if I take a look at a supplier from an external environment, if you're building a solution and you need a supplier's involvement, and the supplier at that moment hasn't got enough resources to help you in building that solution, that's a dependency that could impact your project. Or if you need a supplier to deliver a particular outcome to support your delivery and the supplier is unable to deal with that, there are mitigative strategies you want to put in place, sometimes penalties to that supplier. But the focus is, can we always have a good relationship and help deal with dependencies? Within the product as well, or when building the solutions, different parts of the product could lead to dependencies. We could have dependencies with the functional requirements. We could have dependencies with the technical requirements. We could also have dependencies with the input from the business in helping us build that particular solution. And if you have dependencies on each part of the solution, that could also impact the teams in delivering the outcomes. So when we've taken a look at an external, using the supplier's context, and looked at internal, using the product and solution context, all these are factors that could impact the teams in delivering value to the customer. What I would like us to do in our next session will be a breakout session to discuss some of the challenges you've mentioned here and have a quick discussions in our groups on managing dependencies. I'll be joining one of the teams in this particular discussion. Yeah, we've got 7 minutes. We've got facilitators to help us with discussing the challenges. And we've got Carlos Ancora, who is also an SPC candidate, who will be helping with facilitating. We've got Yusuf Jilani, a release train engineer. We've got Daniel Cosina, who's a safe POPM, a product manager, a pharmacist. And all these gentlemen will be helping us with the facilitations sessions. So we'll be going into a breakout group. And during the breakout session, these are the key things we'll be discussing. What are your challenges with dependency management? Let's discuss those challenges you have encountered based on what I have talked about, and the facilitators will draw on the discussions within the group and reshare them after the breakout session. So we would all be going into a breakout session, and I will encourage everyone to contribute into the breakout session. Yeah. Yusuf, are we ready to go into the breakout session?
Yes. So I'm making 2 rooms.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whilst Yusuf creates the breakout rooms, when we go into the breakout rooms, our facilitators will be helping us, and the facilitators would be Carlos and Senna, and they will be helping facilitate the session. Let's discuss the challenges we have encountered in managing dependencies. Yeah. Have you all got a request to go into the breakout rooms? Yep, let's go into the breakout rooms, and we'll be spending 7 minutes in the breakout room. Okay, it looks like we've got everyone back into the session. So what we will be doing now is we'll be asking the facilitators to give us a quick recap of what was discussed in their group before I move on. So I'll start with Carlos.
Okay, yeah. So we had a good session from our end. We identified 3 main challenges. One from the senior stakeholder side, where the senior stakeholders might not have bought into the idea of a change in a particular product. So it brings a halt in proceedings on how to go about the rest of the program and all of that. Then we also talked about the issue with trying to identify the dependencies. We realized that in the program, sometimes the team are unable to identify the dependencies at the beginning to start working on it early. Sometimes it's because of communication and no synchronization amongst the teams. Or maybe during the planning, they didn't consider all these things before the team started working. Then another one could be at the systems or software development side, where you have the front-end guys and the back-end guys who are working, and they would have to be communicating with each other or collaborating. Sometimes the front-end guy is waiting for something, maybe the database, to be finished by the back-end guy, so that you know the structure, so that you can build the form that would send the data into it, and the back-end guy is slowing down or delaying, and it affects the overall output of the solution or the product that they are coming up with. So those are the 3 main things that we discussed in our group.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I think we also had similar challenges as highlighted by Carlos. And it's I think the internal part, when we are managing people doing remote working, it's a huge challenge. So with people management, we realized that there was lack of information and difficulty in communication. So one member of the team talked about how there was difficulty in getting senior stakeholders into meetings to discuss certain salient points, and how he managed it with making sure that anytime he goes into such meetings, gets a technical person with him, so that as much as possible, every issue that would come up would be dealt with completely. So realize that aspect, the people aspect, it's what's a great challenge when working remotely, and that thing runs through all the contributions the delegates gave. Thank you.
So from what I gather, from what you both have said, it comes back to people. Do we all agree? People create all the dependencies. It's not the tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the technical aspects. It's always the people involved that create all the dependencies. And what are some of the steps we can use to manage the people in dealing with the dependencies? this particular session is just to highlight the key need for everyone to reflect on dependencies. So we all talk about dependencies. I'm just hammering the point. Don't forget about dependencies. They can impact your initiatives. Yeah. So when dealing with dependencies, these are some of the tools and techniques we have used in dealing with dependencies. In terms of tools, we've said tools are not a problem. Jira is not a problem. The PI planning app will not be the problem. Using Slack will not be the problem. But let's look at the events. The backlog refinement session requires people attending. If people don't attend, we can't deal with dependencies. In the Scaled Agile framework, we have pre-PI planning events. It requires people to attend. If people don't attend, to highlight their key problems and to help us identify dependencies in the system, we still can't resolve the dependencies. In the post-PI planning session, which I'll talk about the PI planning session again, if people don't attend, we still can't deal with dependencies. And whether you're part of an agile team or a non-agile team, people have impacts on dependencies. For the SAFE framework, we use the PI planning program board. And I think it's a great tool to highlight dependencies. And I would like to talk about it for a few minutes before we start recapping the session. The SAFE program board is a visualization tool. It's a great tool, but the tool does not solve the problem. What solves the problem is people coming into meetings to discuss how we deal with the dependencies. So what you can see on the board is you've got teams in various value streams. So you've got teams on this end. And then you've got sprint to iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3, iteration 4. The program board is an outcome from the PI planning event. And in SAFE, we say we have a 2-day PI planning. In a non-SAFE environment, we do call it a big room planning event, which can take 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, or 4 days. And the focus is, can we get all the teams coming together? And if the teams come together, they will plan together, work together, identify dependencies, resolve them, and go away and deliver the solution. From a SAFE environment, the 2-day PI planning brings all the teams, it brings senior management, and it also brings members of the program. Why do I highlight on the SAFE framework? When I compare the SAFE framework to other frameworks, what I have seen from my experience is every quarter we bring senior management and the teams together to plan around the solution being built. So if we bring senior management and the teams and whoever could impact the team to a 2-day planning event, we are able to plan for the next program increment, which could be the next quarter. And when everyone is there, we are able to identify dependencies, look at the dependencies, resolve them, and they don't impact the delivery of the solution in the next quarter. So 2 days, senior management, teams, an outcome is the program board, and each team will identify a dependency on a particular feature. So the teams have features, and once they identify the dependencies, they'll link the dependencies with strings or with a line to reflect the dependencies. And where we've got too much dependencies, we know those dependencies would impact the delivery of the product. So we need to take a strong look at those, and then we can resolve them. And if we are unable to resolve them, we can find someone who would own the dependencies, someone who can mitigate the dependencies. And our approach is to mitigate the dependencies. What are some of the tactics we can use in dealing with dependencies of such scale on large initiatives? First, we can train the teams involved by upscaling the teams and making sure that everyone has got the necessary skill set to help in building the solution. Secondly, we could set up a proactive agenda that would help every meeting take some time to focus on dependencies. If you don't set up that proactive agenda and craft some time in the meetings to deal with dependencies, dependencies will be left undealt with, and that can impact the entire solution. Thirdly, we can continuously review the existing architecture with the architects and the teams building the solution and our suppliers on a bi-weekly basis or on a monthly basis. And if we continuously do this exercise, that can help us identify the dependencies, create strategies, and start dealing with the dependencies. Fourthly, we'll use our backlog refinement sessions to deal with the dependencies. And as a product owner, product manager, the focus is for you to use your backlog refinement session to deal with the dependencies. Some of the things we can choose to do when looking at dependencies are, we can choose to look away or dip our heads into the sun and hope that the dependencies will go away, and they won't. Dependencies never go away. Alternatively, we can open our eyes, keep focused, and deal with the dependencies. And if we can put in place measures to help deal with the dependencies, that would help us eliminate the dependencies within the solutions we are building. So the ROAM technique can be a reminder as you work on your initiatives in dealing with the dependencies. With regards to the ROAM technique, we said the R is to resolve the dependencies. When you identify the dependencies, always focus on how can we resolve these dependencies. O is, if we cannot resolve the dependencies, can we find someone to own it? And we can use the RACI model. We have to find someone who will be responsible, someone who will be accountable, someone who should be consulted, someone who should be informed, and that can help us in dealing with the dependency. We could also mitigate the dependencies, whether in the solution, in building the software, or with people. We should be able to mitigate the dependencies. Most agile frameworks have that huge focus that dependencies don't exist. Throughout the meetings, we should be able to eliminate the dependencies, and they shouldn't have impact on the solution being built. So whenever you're working on a solution, don't forget ROAM: resolve, own, mitigate, and eliminate. To recap our session on what we've discussed on dependency management: first, always identify dependencies. Create plans for managing the dependencies, whether they are people, solution, market, political, or whatever focus you have. Let's always make sure that we deal with such dependencies. Let's proactively manage the dependencies and monitor the dependencies in our meetings or with our various sessions we're having with our stakeholders. And can we eliminate the dependency? That will be the key focus. Upskill, have meetings that would focus on dependency management, get suppliers to understand the impact of dependencies, and visualize the dependency, either using a program board, a Kanban tool, whatever will help you visualize the dependency. And a picture, we all know, says 1,000 words. So if you can put a dependency in a picture, you get most people interested in dealing with the dependencies. Thank you for giving me your ears in talking about dependency. I've got a keen interest in dealing with dependencies. But at this time, what I would like to encourage everyone is let's keep safe and stay healthy in these interesting times whilst we work remotely with our various teams. Yeah. So I will use this opportunity to welcome questions. Feel free to unmute your mics to ask questions or type questions into the question area, and we'll take a few questions before we close the session.
Okay, thank you all and William for joining today and sharing your thoughts. So if you have any questions, you can either speak or you can put it in the chat. I'm just watching, through the chat for any questions.
So I have a question, or it could even be a contribution. Just wanted to ask, with the general consensus that came from everybody that a lot dependent on people when it came to dependency management. Could you also say sometimes the software could also be part of the reason? Because for our solution, yes, we had people that we found that in terms of our root cause analysis that we did, we found that, yeah, the people were part of it. But we also found that actually the system or the software or the platform that we're building, we could make certain changes and automate a lot of the processes. And what took 6 weeks to build took 3 days in the end to be able to build. So as you can imagine, it really improved the customer journey with us. Thank you.
Okay. So in both ways, as Isaac is saying, both the system and people could be a factor in looking at whilst resolving dependencies. And we've got a question from Gina. How do you spend time identifying dependencies from the start of a project? Yes, if we were working in any environment, when we're starting to deliver a particular solution or a project, we'll start by looking at the various supporting documents that would help us in delivering that particular project or solution. So we start off by looking into the business case. In the business case, the person who spent time writing the business case would have highlighted some dependencies on the solution being built. So looking through the business case, we could start identifying various systems that will have an impact on the project we are working on. We will also identify various stakeholders who will be involved, various external vendors, and people within the business that can impact the delivery of the solution. Once you've identified this, I recommend always using your Excel spreadsheet. I've not seen it. There are tools which are being used in the software environment to manage dependencies. But if you know with the software team building the solution, you could always use your Excel spreadsheet to start mapping out the dependencies. Another unified modeling language tool that you could use in dealing with dependencies are, you could build a context diagram. A context diagram tells us of the interrelationships that exist with the solution we are building with other systems in the ecosystem. So if we've got a solution we're building and we've identified all the other systems that would impact and be impacted by our solution, that is a way of starting to identify the dependencies that exist. And if we can start the communication very early, it would help us in resolving any potential dependencies that would derail our projects. Always speak to your stakeholders, and they can also help you in identifying potential dependencies. So first, start off with the project start-off documents, the business case, use context diagrams, use the various planning documents, and if you can keep an eye on where dependencies are, you can always list them and start working on those. Any other questions? I hope I've helped you, Gina.
Yes, thank you so much.
Any other questions, Gina, or contributions?
So I see no other questions in the chat box. So all right. So I think from the discussion, I just came out that there are certain tools we can use. So roaming, then RACI, then in context diagram, which is quite new to me. And yeah, so when we are trying to manage dependencies, recently I just came across that I was trying to book my holidays. It's not necessary that it should be some software product that we are building. It can be a very simple project like booking my holiday, where I was actually looking into dependency considering the COVID-19 situation here. So I just made a little bit of a diagrams on a piece of paper. It doesn't need to be a Jira, or it doesn't need to be very complex software that we need to use for a simple project like booking holidays. I don't know, what do you think, William?
Yep. So it doesn't have to be Jira or any complex tool. Mapping it out on the paper can always be a start. And so having a paper, identifying the systems, and then like a mind map, Mel has said, yes, we can always start with a mind map, and the mind map always would help us. So this, Mel has mentioned of a very important tool or technique that we can use, and the mind map is absolutely a very good technique and tool that you can use as a context diagram to help you identify all the interrelations. And the interrelations could be internal and external. And I know Gina has asked me a question, but I'm also looking at time. We've got 3 minutes. Gina, is it okay if we have further discussions on your question?
That's fine. Fine.
Thank you, Gina. So
okay, so again, thanks everyone, and I'm extremely sorry that initially I was unable to join. So for further information, you can visit our website, leanicontechnology.co.uk. You can see there are a few courses we run in project management and specifically scaled agile framework. For example, this month we have already run these 4 courses, and next month as well we will run a few courses, as well as not only SAFE but also general project management related, business analysis related courses. So please visit our website for further information. And thank you all for joining today, and have a nice day, and please be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you all. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.